So 13 days to go in the political world last night. Many eyes were on the Pennsylvania Senate debate because it was the one and only face-off between the candidates that Pennsylvania voters will get to see. Front and center in that debate, issues of the health of Democratic nominee John Fetterman. It has been in all the headlines after the debate. It's been talked about by other politicians both in and outside of Pennsylvania. And it's been noted by Fetterman's Republican nominee, Dr. Mehmet Oz. What really matters, of course, is how voters felt about the debate and if they believe Fetterman's recovery from a stroke is progressing or had any impact on their actual decision once they get to the ballot box, should they go there. My colleague Robert Costa spoke to some today to get some voter reaction.
I don't think he is fit for public office. I know he has health issues, and that's not a stereotype, but it does affect what he needs to do for the people.
If people have a problem with someone that has a disability, we all got disabilities. If that's your problem with someone, then you should put everybody out. I'm sure Oz got some kind of disability too.
He has a health issue, and that's not fair, I think, necessarily to criticize the man for that. He didn't compare to Oz, but Oz is also a TV personality.
Pennsylvania was just one of a number of states that had debates that happened Tuesday evening. The governors of both New York and Michigan also debated their Republican challengers in two races that are, experts say, shaping up to be much tighter than expected. For more on all of this, I am joined by two of my most excellent CBS News colleagues, political correspondent Caitlin Huey Burns. She joins me here on the set. And congressional correspondent Nikole Killion is also here in our Washington, D.C. bureau. So, Caitlin, let me ask you, I've been talking to some people in Pennsylvania about that debate, and two things were constant in those conversations. One, it was a rough night for Fetterman, but we have to judge this not based on previous debates where there wasn't someone performing who is recovering from a stroke. You have to judge this one differently and use that as a context. And two, many people I talked to were curious why Fetterman's team didn't prepare him better for some of the issues that were raised in that debate, quite separate from his performance.
Well, I think that's really important to look at because, first of all, I think it's absolutely fair game to question a candidate's fitness for office, especially when they had a stroke. And there had been questions about how transparent the Fetterman campaign had been about his condition. But I also think that you have to look at the substance of what was said during the debate. And there were questions that remain for Fetterman, especially when he was asked to address his support, his former opposition to fracking. He didn't give a clear answer. And in some place like Pennsylvania, that is a very intimate issue, a personal issue, a very parochial issue for voters there. So I think there is a way to ask questions about his health, and he had the opportunity to show how he is doing now. And that was part of his campaign's strategy in terms of doing this debate, right? Wanting to say, this is, I'm here, I'm debating, I'm capable. Voters can assess that for themselves. That's not for us to do. But I think you also have to look at the substance of the debate. And he also, had the opportunity to score some points against Oz, especially on the issue of abortion.
So let's talk about that. I believe we have something from the debate itself that Dr. Oz said that has since been turned into a commercial somewhat rapidly by the Fetterman campaign. Can we run that?
This is who Dr. Oz wants in charge of women's health care decisions.
I want women, doctors, local political leaders, local political leaders, local political leaders.
Oz would let politicians like Doug Mastriano ban abortion without exceptions, even in cases of rape, incest, or life of the mother. Oz is too extreme for Pennsylvania.
I'm John Fetterman, and I approve this message.
Two observations on that, Caitlin. One, quick turnaround. Second, pivot from whatever the debate performance aftermath is to an abortion that Democrats have leaned into aggressively, not only in Pennsylvania, but in many other competitive states.
Exactly. And almost right after this happened, you could have imagined that this would be cut quickly into an ad, and this is all that Democrats were focused on, which shows that they didn't want the attention to be on the stubbles from Fetterman.
Nikole, I want to ask you about abortion in the context of the Georgia Senate race, which I know you've paid close attention to. There were some revelations today that may roil that campaign even further, and it's been one roiled by this issue already. Catch your audience up on some of that.
Yeah, so this is another woman who is now coming forward alleging that Herschel Walker actually, in this instance, drove her to an abortion clinic to get an abortion. She is being represented by attorney Gloria Allred out in Los Angeles, and she is just only being identified as Jane Doe. She spoke during a press conference earlier today about why she is coming forward now. Let's take a listen.
For anyone who believes I am coming forward because Herschel is running as a Republican candidate, that is simply not the case. I am a registered independent, and I voted for Donald Trump in both elections. I do not believe that Herschel is morally fit to be a U.S. Senator, and that is the reason why I am speaking up and providing proof.
To call Herschel Walker a hypocrite in her view because, again, of his pro-life stance. He has been very clear that he supports life, although he has softened his position on the issue a bit. Initially, he said that he was for some type of national abortion ban without exceptions, and then he has since, most recently in the debate that occurred in Georgia a couple weeks ago, said that he supports Georgia's fetal heartbeat bill, which does include some exceptions. So that being said, this woman said kind of when she heard his position and his stance, and also in light of other allegations by another woman who claims that Herschel Walker paid for her to have an abortion, she just felt that he is being very hypocritical on this issue. And so that's why she felt it was important for her to come forward, because as a candidate who is pro-life, in her words, as she said, she felt pressure to get this abortion. And so that's why she felt it was important to speak up. Now, Herschel Walker did say ahead of this press conference today with this woman that he believes that this is all foolishness. His campaign has since put out another statement reiterating that they think that this is foolishness, although they have not yet addressed the more specific allegations that this woman has made. But again, it just kind of goes to the core of Herschel Walker's truthfulness. And that is something that I asked him about when I was in Georgia, what he says to voters who question his truthfulness. And he told me just a week ago that he is trying to turn the page, that he has addressed these allegations, and that he is trying to move forward. But obviously, he can't move forward if he now has to deal with this new allegation. So again, we will see kind of how this all unfolds. Obviously, early voting is underway in Georgia, so many voters have already cast their ballots. But again, this is something that is coming less than 2 weeks before the midterms, where Walker is in a very tight race with Reverend Raphael Warnock, the incumbent Democratic senator.
So, Nikole, very quickly, since the audience heard this new accuser say providing proof, don't assess the validity of it, but because I don't want to put you in that position, but for the audience, what does the accuser mean when she says speaking up and providing proof?
Well, in terms of this press conference that was held a short time ago with reporters, her attorney, Gloria Allred, did provide what she says is evidence that this woman did, in fact, have a relationship with Herschel Walker. So she, for instance, showed reporters a hotel receipt from a time where this woman and Herschel Walker had stayed at a hotel together in Minnesota. She also provided cards that purported to have Herschel Walker's signature, as well as a photo of Herschel Walker and a recording of someone who sounds like him. So that is, kind of what evidence her attorney has put forward thus far. She would not, however, say how much Walker allegedly paid this woman to get an abortion, or, she wouldn't go into the details there. So there are still a lot of questions surrounding this case. But either way, it is now something that the Walker campaign has to deal with yet again in the midst of this very tight contest with Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock. So,
Nikole,
we know that Walker will continue to be on the trail, and I'm sure will continue to face questions on this front.
No doubt. Nikole, thank you. Caitlin, let's talk about crime, because you noticed that issue. We talked about it at this desk in the context of the Wisconsin Senate race. It came up in the New York governor's race. Kathy Hochul seeking to win that outright. And also, Lee Zeldin, her Republican nominee challenger, debated it last night. Let's take a quick listen.
I'm running to take back our streets and to support unapologetically our men and women in law enforcement. This is about all of us together, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, as New Yorkers, to make sure our streets are safe again.
I have worked hard to have real policies that are making a difference. And as you mentioned, that data is still being collected. But I did focus on bail reform in our budget. That's why the budget was 9 days late, because I insisted on common sense changes. But there is no crime-fighting plan if it doesn't include guns, illegal guns. And you refuse to talk about how we can do so much more. You didn't even show up for votes in Washington.
Caitlin, we have about a minute left. The contours of that debate and how you're seeing it playing out.
Yeah, and talking to Republicans this week, they believe that crime is going to be something that could possibly make the difference in this final stretch, and they are really honing in on that in these specific races. And when you talk about crime, you heard Kathy Hochul talk about what Democrats are trying to counter with, which is gun reforms. We actually haven't really heard much on that, but Republicans are making the argument that, look, it's not just about that. It's about people just not feeling safe, and we hear that from voters, and it has to do with, not only homicides, but carjackings, and Zeldin mentioned that in the debate as well. So this is something that Democrats know that they're vulnerable on and are trying to figure out a way to respond, and also trying to get away from a lot of the messaging that they had before. But this is certainly, we're hearing from campaigns and strategists and operatives that this is something that they think could make a difference in some of these tight races.
And it feels like there is some overhang from 2020 in the defund the police, even though no Democrat is really running on that in a competitive race.
Exactly. And especially in some of these federal offices, there's kind of little that they can actually do in that position. This has to do a lot with state and local governments, and we saw that in Wisconsin. But it's the overall kind of message that they believe feeds into and a way for them to attack Democrats.
And the underlying statistics, which poll after poll show us, is on the mind of lots of voters, not just in Wisconsin, New York, but nationwide. Caitlin Huey Burns, Nikole Killion, thank you so very much.